Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up today, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I'm pleased to present two really interesting and accomplished music industry players who also happen to be close friends and what they say are twin brothers from other mothers. I promise you will leave today thinking, wow, who knew? And you'll also leave smarter and more inspired than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. The second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and please make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the session. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this series free. Special thank you to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, MedJet, Tennessee Brew Works, Project Music, and Better Than Booze. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome back an alum of our series, Clay Busch. Clay has been an entertainment industry veteran for 17 plus years, specializing in marketing, branding, partnerships, and live events in a variety of industries, including entertainment, spirits, comics, and other alternative categories. He's currently vice president at Shelter Music Group, heading their lifestyle marketing and partnership strategy, as well as managing one of their premier clients, Fred Minnick. He broke into the music scene as a product manager at Interscope Geffen A&M Records. He then moved on to be the former first hire and executive for Danny Wimmer Presents. Prior to joining Shelter, Clay founded 618 Media Agency, a boutique marketing, branding, and events agency. The agency currently advises brands and companies and artists, including Danny Wimmer Presents, GWAR, I'm not going to pronounce that right, Ragnarok Rye Whiskey, sorry about that, Clay, Beartooth's Berries Batch Rye Whiskey, 3-Chord Bourbon, Infinite Objects, and many more. 618 Media Agency is also a partner in the ready-to-drink line Mai Tai by Haddam & Jones, as well as Heavy Grass Cannabis Company out of California. Clay's been a successful independent marketing consultant for many years with other former clients, including the Hard Rock Cafe, Maloof Family Ventures, including the Palms Hotel in Vegas, Sacramento Kings, Monster Energy, Outbreak Tour, and the Maloof Money Cup, Monster Energy, Zippo Lighters, Interscope Records, and many more. Clay, welcome back, brother. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And joining Clay as today's featured guest is Josh Bernstein. With 20 plus years in the music, media, and live events industries, Josh Bernstein has established himself as a respected, passionate, and knowledgeable power player with achievements across TV, film, live production, graphic design, publishing, marketing, and digital realms. Currently a partner and president of Z2 Comics, Josh has been widely recognized as the co-founder, producer, and creative engine behind several globally recognized events and brands, including the Revolver Golden Gods Awards, XXL Freshman Shows, the AP Music Awards, the Loudwire Awards, the Rock and Roll Roast Series, and Hit Parader's No Cover TV show. Working in partnership with Apple, Amazon Music, Viacom, Twitch, WWE, Spin, the Grammys, and Danny Wimmer Presents. He currently hosts the Power Hour weekly on Access Television with co-hosts Matt Penfield and Katie Babbs. It is an honor to welcome these two rock stars to our platform. Take it away, boys.
Thanks so much, Tom. I appreciate it.
Josh, you start because you're obviously a host on TV, and this is kind of out of my wheelhouse. So I almost think that I should defer to you.
I don't have like a Zoom endorsement, but luckily, Very the title of the show is quite funny, and obviously, I don't know if it's true. I'm not even sure if it's true with the two of us on this phone call with Tom. And thank you, Tom, so much for having me be a part of this and having Clay be a part of this. I've been a longtime fan of everything Tom has been doing here. I didn't realize he was also a headhunter, so I'll send my resume right after this this interview. But yeah, Clay, I think we've been asked to discuss, all things. I always sort of joke. There's like you and I could probably name the 4, 5, 6 other people on our hands that we've met in the last 10, 15 or so years in the music business, dare I say the rock side of the business, that know how to find a sponsor, right? And it's always talked about as a very like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a festival, I'm going to do this, and then you just call a bunch of sponsors, and it's easy, and that'll just happen. But you and I, and a couple of our good friends, like Maureen Balker or Kate Truscott, a couple other great folk, Chris Thomas, out there who have done these great things and know, shall we say, that's secret to talking to brands and actually helping them. And what are we actually doing, right? We're actually, at best, hopefully solving their problems for them, right? You make a drink, we're helping you get those drinks into someone's hands, right? We're getting the right cosign from the right celebrity to do this. Or even, God forbid, someone randomly, skateboards with some ocean spray, and it happens to be your client that they're using the song to on TikTok. And then you literally ride that wave. So there's so many different fun ways to involve music and branding together. And I think that's sort of the crux of what we're talking about here. And I can't really tell how the chat works here, but whoever's out there, welcome. And, send your questions to us as well. And we'll happy to join in the conversation. But yeah, Clay, what would be a good example for you? Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to.
Well, I was going to say, because you brought up sponsorships, right? And I think that's the first wrong thing to say when you're going into conversations with brands. I think you and I are in the partnership game, right? Yeah. I think it's understanding, and I always say this when I speak to people. The first thing you need to understand, it's not your goals. It's never your goals. And I'm in the management side, and it's important for me to make sure our artists are getting what they need and what our goals are. But at the same time, you need to make sure that those kind of meet in the middle with the brand you're speaking to, right? And at the end of the day, it's their campaign, it's their year, and how can you be complimentary? And I think some of the secret sauce, without going to get the check, is if you go and saying, hey, I have this incredible brand, we have a built-in audience, this great IP, how can we help you reach those goals? To what you were talking about, Josh, I think that's the first mistake people make when they kind of start building relationships, especially in this brand sponsorship world, quote unquote, is because they're always chasing, oh, I need to get my bottom line, I get that $20,000 check, or I got to get that $100,000 check. And we do need to get those dollars, right? But I think more importantly is like, all right, well, if I don't have that $20,000 check, or they don't have that $20,000 check, how can this turn into, maybe this turns into $200,000 value, where the artist is monetizing on the back end. And that's where I love the term, I always throw around, mailbox money, right? Where these partnerships can grow into bigger and better things outside of, hey, in order for us to get started, we need to get the advance. So I think it's important right off the bat is to be a partner and not chase the check, and be there to complement each other, because it's about long term more than anything.
Let me ask you a question. You and I, are of a similar generation, and I think definitely grew up in which there was the very common idea, and again, I don't know if it's a rule or a byline, of selling out, right? I don't know what selling out exactly means, or, but when I was a kid, or even in the 90s, right, it was like the first time the Rolling Stones "You Start Me Up" for like Windows, or when did it become, when was there, in your opinion, was there sort of that switch of like, I know what it was for me, but I'm just curious for you, of like, where I think it was a very classic rock mentality to be like, screw the man. And then I think other people were like, wait, maybe the man could actually help us more than the man at the label, or the man at the in the venue. I don't know. I'm just curious for you when it became more acceptable.
Yeah, I think I always use the Metallica example when they cut their hair, right? And like you sold out, and like, no, we're growing, we're a brand, like, and I think brands change and brands need to evolve, and an artist is a brand, right? And I look at Metallica. I think the switch for in our culture, rock has always been true and no corporate sellouts and everything we hear. But as soon as the car companies started coming in and using this music in television commercials, and I think the drink companies and the beer companies specifically, especially around country and rock early on, I think more than anything, it's like when you can attach yourselves to a lifestyle, it's not selling out. You're super serving your brand now. So, if you're a Jack Daniels and you want to touch a certain audience and you want country, well, you go and attack Eric Church, because that's an authentic partnership between the two brands there, and you can help grow that. I think it started with beverage and it started with car, personally for me, which showed the value of attaching affinities, attaching fan bases, attaching like-minded demographics, where you may be a fan of this and you may not know this or that, but you will be a fan of this because they all meet in the middle, right? And your friends are listening to it and it's in the same genre or to the same affinity or whatever it may be. But to me, it was the cars, the beverages, and then really look at what Monster Energy came in and did, where they were there to not necessarily to huck their product. It was there to support artists, and the artists, because Monster loved them so much and allowed them to get started, the artists were proud to put the can on stage. The artists were proud to rock the claw on the wristband, and having it be a part of their ecosystem and a part of their lifestyle. I think that's the true part of this, is like, you can tell when a partnership's not authentic, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to name the artist and I'm not going to name the organization, but there was a Instagram video was flown around about how our country's dealing with economic recession coming up, and it's hard to spend money on concert tickets, and the artist made it seem like they're doing them a favor and they're doing this discount, and then the very next day Live Nation announces the $25 discount, right? Or the $25 ticket. And I think it's good to super serve your fans in that sense for a discount, but be authentic. Like, to me, it came across that you weren't being genuine, because if you really genuinely cared about your fan and cared about the money, well, let's buy 10 tickets and give them away to fans that can't make it. Like, let's do those types of things to show how much we care about our fan base, not attach ourselves to a promotion and making it look non-authentic.
Exactly, it's a very good point, and especially I see in the chat, Kevin Tremonti's here. Hey, Kev. And it's true, yeah. I mean, Eric Church, right? What's the song? Whiskey and Weed. Great track. Like, he lives and breathes that, right? It's authentic, and maybe no more overused word in our business, right? Then it's authentic. It's organic, synergy. Any of those words, right? You try not to retch. I have a distinct memory of Bob Dylan doing a Victoria's Secret commercial, and that moment being like the ultimate, like, 60s, like, blowing in the wind, being like, hey, boobs, push-up bra. Like, and I was like, I feel like the next day, it's not true, but the next day the Who was on CSI and everything else was just like, fuck it, we're going for it, right? And I see a lot of trends in music now. I think the trend in music now is very similar to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but basically like the reemergence of baseball card collecting during the pandemic, right? Live sports ended. People could enjoy live sports or live music, so people retreated into their inner comfort food, right? Some people's comfort food was mac and cheese or mashed potatoes, or like a Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, right? And people
Which I have, by the way, Josh. Which I have.
You have that, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we'll put it in the chat, and you can bid on it.
Yeah.
That stuff became commoditized. I've been working. Blessed to have been working with bands and music for the past, maybe almost 20 years now. And, I've always looked at it as like, wow, like, if there's a way to get this done, to your point, whether it was Monster Energy, a Rockstar, a Jägermeister, there's a lot of these brands that were, and I'll say this, that your Converses and your Levi's, what you think of the Ray-Bans or your traditional rock and roll brands might not have stuck around and supported rock and roll during the lean years, but your Monsters, Rockstars, Jaegers, Harleys, all my sweet beef jerkies, and all of our beautiful armed forces never gave up on this audience. And like, it's not like everyone hitchhiked. There's not 100,000 people hitchhiking to these concerts. People aren't hitchhiking or taking public transportation to a Danny Wimmer concert. They're taking a Ford, a Dodge, or a Chevy, and they want to talk about it and they're proud about it. And they also buy insurance and have fancy cell phones and do this other stuff. And what I love about the rock audience, I always say this line, I think I've said it to you, I've said it to others, like, ignore this audience and ignore their passion at your own peril. Right? Like, I'll always, and especially this is more, I'm sure you've had this experience where you take an agency meeting, you're meeting with clients. Maybe the clients are maybe young enough to be your children, and they're like, rock and roll, is that still around? You mean like Aerosmith? Like, I've heard every weird thing in a sales meeting, and I always kind of just smile to myself, because it's like, it doesn't matter what it's all here, and the people that have played along and played the long game with this audience have done quite well. And again, you bring up Jack Daniels, Monster, Gibson, another great company that I've worked with for years in this space that has been so supportive, and I could literally trace the effects of their work and the results of it. And I was going to ask you that was sort of my follow-up question for you, is like, can you maybe, or for the folks here, like, take me through a great example of a problem you might have solved for a problem you might have identified for a client, and then maybe help solve for them, other than like, I took your 15 grand and you got your logo this big.
It's funny, Josh, because you brought it up. You said when you walk into a meeting, oh, a rock band, is Aerosmith's, is that a rock band? Like,
is that still around? Is that still alive?
Yeah, and that's nails on a chalkboard for me, because at the end of the day, rock and roll is not a genre of music, and I cannot say that enough to everyone on this call. It is a culture. If rock and roll is a genre of music, you would not have hip hop kids rocking Metallica shirts. It's fashion, it's culture, it's all across the board. And I think, going back to, don't pay attention to rock and roll. Rock's always a part of your culture and lifestyle. And I think with what you and I specifically do is we try to super serve underserved people, right? Where, television, mass media, those are the brands they want you to consume. Those are the brands they want you to be listening to, or artists they want you to buy tickets for. It's a very segmented group. It's only really targeting, and I always say half the country, but it's probably less than half the country. But there's another group of people that are underserved. And Josh, you and I hear this all the time. We preach it to ourselves. We try to super serve the underserved, right? And there's a lot of brands that have done that. And major brands, Monster Energy is a perfect example of super serving the underserved. They wanted to go after motocross, the truck driver, the rock and roller, the heavy metaler,
martial
artist guy, the brick waller, the guy working on your house. They understand who they were. They weren't going after the guy driving the $200,000 Maserati in Los Angeles that spends $300 every time he goes out to dinner with his wife. That's not who they touch. And I think that's the core understanding of going back to rock culture, rock and roll, who the core demographic is. It's just the general person. It's the general male and female in this country that is working hard, the middle class that, spends their hard-earned money on certain things. And I think that's where, when you go back to like finding brands that want to be a part of this world and attaching themselves, it's more than just an Iron Maiden dropping a beer because they want to do a cool stout, an English stout that's themed around them, that is quality like their band, and that they want their fans to consume. It's hip hop. I mean, I'm literally rocking a pair of the Run the Jewels Nike shoes. That's a rock brand. Like when Danny and I put Run the Jewels on the Aftershock Festival, that was a heavy metal festival for the band, and they wanted it and they liked it and it worked, and the fans embraced it because, if you listen to Run the Jewels, they incorporate Rage Against Machine music in their stuff, and Mike and LP are massive metal fans. So, I think it goes back to like understanding that this is not 3, 4, 5 kids on stage playing music. This is what they do off the stage. This is how they dress. This is, a lot of our rock stars now are bigger off the stage than they are in their bands because they're so into fashion and into culture that way. So I think it's core to just understand and support the nostalgia that pop culture still pulls out of our world. And, we always kind of lead the charge when it comes to that from an underground perspective. That's
great. I see Tom just asked a good question, similar to one I just asked you, but the one that comes to mind for me, Tom, is actually Gibson. I first linked up. I had the pleasure of linking up with Gibson. There's a great joke in this business. Myself and Blasco is a good friend of ours, and our other friend Ryan Downey. We always joke that if you didn't start in a band or booking basement shows or making your own zine, like Like that was the college for this industry, right? And I came through the zine path, and Epiphone guitars used to, buy ads in my little zine, and support me, and that relationship grew from literally like a very punk rock, grassroots thing. Around 2008, Epiphone guitars, that point in time was sort of seen as the sub brand of Gibson, right? Not quite the Squire to Fender, but their sub brand, and maybe didn't really have a lot of endorsements. Maybe Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day. Their mission at the time was, how do we want to be accepted by the heavy metal community, and it was a really tall order. We, at the time, were crafting an award show for heavy metal. We convinced them to become the title sponsor and basically gift guitars to all the young guitar players over the years and start getting them to turn into Gibson and Epiphone players. It's like, we call this as a pro wrestling fan, long-term booking. It totally paid off. We look right now in 2023, from our award show, Lizzie Hale endorsement, Matt Heafy from Trivium endorsement, Brendan Small from Death Clock endorsement. There was like 3 or 4 other, Rob Flynn from Machine Head. And then eventually now, Dave Mustaine from Megadeth, our first headliner, and then Kirk Hammett, our final headliner. So it was one of those things where they invested money at the time in doing a certain thing, which was basically changing the entire public perception of what their brand is to a certain type of player. And we did get there in time, and I still to this day have a wonderful relationship with these folks and love working with them. They've become family. And I think that's probably the best example where they straight up were like, well, here's what we want. We want to be a heavy metal guitar. And it's not like you go to the heavy metal, you don't go to Ozzy's house and write a check, you just, that's a 10, 15-year plan, but we sort of got there. And, I'm not part of that anymore. They've done a lot of that on their own, and success has a million fathers, but that's probably a really good example, I think, of like taking sort of a problem and a plan and trying to sort of solve it for them in real time. That's sort of a lot of the deal when we work with Harley. Millennials and Gen X do not want motorcycles, no matter how many times you put them in the Vin Diesel movies. No one gives a shit. Like it's a Gen X baby boomer thing, right? And it's like, how do we get Harleys? How do we let kids know, or young people know, there's a Harley for under 10 grand, right? And it is accessible. And what if we give you free lessons and free riding lessons, like all these other things to really, what do we teach you? Safety, all these other things that are out there. So I like being a part of that and seeing that there's a result. Like there's nothing better, right, than seeing a physical result of your work, which is probably why I work in comic books, or festivals or events, because you work on something and then at the end of the day, there's a physical thing that's happening. Not like I took this pile of money and moved it to this other pile of money and now I'm a rich person.
Well, and Josh, to answer my side for Tom's question, I have a ton of my favorite, partnerships that I've gotten to the finish line, from our ZZ Top whiskey partnership, to Jack Daniels at DWP, which kind of stands out to me more than anything, is a partnership that I think I'm most proud of in my career, is bringing Jack Daniels to Danny Represents. And was a long time ago now, and they're still there, but it was incredible because that's a perfect example of understanding data and understanding who your fan is and taking that to a brand and asking them, why aren't you here super serving your core demo? And that's what happened with Jack. I mean, Jack was the #1 poured whiskey beverage at Danny's festivals for a long time before they came in. And that allowed us to kind of bring the activations, bring the experience. And what you do there is it's about super serving your fan, right? Yep. And the people who are there. Well, now you have activations. Now you have
responsibly serving your fan.
Responsibly serving your fan, of course. But the bringing the activations out. So now not only are they drinking Jack and having a good time at the rock festival in Jacksonville or Carolina or Rock on the Range at the time, but now you're actually there with the brand that you love, and they're giving you swag, and they're letting you try stuff for the first time if you're over 21, or you can go through the trailer and learn about whiskey. That to me was an incredible partnership that's still around. I love seeing Jack at Danny's festivals every time I pop up to Bourbon and Beyond or any of his festivals. But that one to me is a really great partnership that has stood the test of time because that was sticky, right? Jack understood who the demo was, vice versa, and it's been an incredible partnership for Danny.
let's discuss, sort of, what, I'd like to sort of give people a little background on how we originally met and some of the cool things that you and I have done together. As you mentioned, you were the I guess first ever hire at Danny Wimmer Presents, and I kind of want to say I think I was there around that time or met
That's when we
you
met.
or very early on, and we had met at that time when we were doing the festivals. You and I really, you and I had really sort of, I guess our special sauce was sort of coming up with what we called this ESPN game day sort of like idea. And we did this at multiple, whether I was working at media brands or you were at multiple festivals, this idea of like bringing that college sort of game day spirit and, idea to the mix where, there's excitement. We're hyping up the bands before they go on stage. We're asking them what plays they're going to do, what's their set, what's going to happen, and really creating the culture around these events. Because inherently, a festival is it's four walls somewhere for a limited amount of time, right? But how are we, as brand stewards, partners, what have you, engaging with these people the other 364 days a year? And how important that is. And you and I have, in turn, ended up creating some content that is really, I think, it become effective. And so much of that content, and again, I don't see much of this in our specific subgenre. Just so everybody knows, Clay and I work in the dirty rock and roll business. So we're more in hard rock, metal, alternative, hip hop and punk stuff. But the branded content is not as prevalent as you might think. And I think we've sort of by sheer force and sheer ingenuity have come up with a lot of these content plays, from eating contests to getting people doing like extreme stunts to meet and greets to actual digital content series. How effective do you think that stuff has been for brands, and how do you see the value in sort of adding all these other ancillary things, and other than just being that physical activation or maybe the signage?
Well, just like out, and this is not just relates to festival. I think this relates to any brand building you're doing where you have four walls that are controlling a setting. We always joke that we're building mini rock cities when we popped up these events, and I'm sure that term is still used now. I think there's two ways of looking at it. You have the people on site that you need to super serve, which you and I did effectively through, just band interactions, eating, Beartooth having a barbecue eating contest at Carolina Rebellion in the front of house, in front of all the fans, riling them up, and using that as a content play. But also what we did with Zippo too, where it's more than just having a band play acoustic to 50 to 100 select people that won a contest on site. That's broadcast out to the world. So now you have the FOMO moments that are happening, the fear of missing out, right? Where I feel, and this is for anything. Like if you're a touring band, you're going and doing your in-stores, or you're popping up at a skate shop, or you're doing some type of food thing with a food truck. It adds these FOMO moments when you want to drive excitement, you want to drive traffic, you want to drive these experiences. And that's what people remember. It's not just I bought a ticket, I go to the show. Those days are long and gone now with the internet, because attention spans are so minimal.
Well,
you
let's
watch
go back to let's go back to the Zippo thing quickly.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was, so I want to say about 2015, 2016. I can't remember the year, but we were at the time it was called the Carolina Rebellion Festival in North Kakalaki. And it was there was Zippo Lighters was a sponsor. I'm sure I have a couple spare Zippos here by my desk at all times. But Zippo was a sponsor, and what they did was so cool is basically they made a branded Welcome to Rockville Zippo. And if you purchased the Zippo for $40, wherever it was, you then got access to a private Zippo lounge where bands were then going to do acoustic performances. I had gone out and gotten, we had basically begged all the bands to play for free. But the best part of the story, Clay, as I don't remember, is that there was one guy that I didn't know who he was at the time. John Varvatos had a.
Is this Andrew? Is this Andrew?
This is Andrew, yeah.
I love
John
this
Varvatos, famous clothing designer, had has a record imprint through Universal, and had some pretty great bands on it. Tyler Bryant, The Shakedown, and he had this kid Andrew. Didn't really know him, but basically the rule was everyone played one of their big hit songs acoustic, and then a famous cover song acoustic. And he's like, "Hey, can I borrow that back line. I'm like, well, it's the other bands after you. So they went to the other band, and the band's name is Cane Hill, who they've since become pretty big. And this guy, Andrew Watt, proceeded to play an incredible cover of Mysterious Ways by U2, which in the context was pretty awesome. And then to finish his set, he smashed all the gear, but it wasn't his gear. And that caused a little bit of a kerfuffle, backstage after. And I just thought, man, I don't know who that little kid is, but he's got such moxie and he's so talented. I was so blown away. And it was one of those things I'm like, I wonder whatever happened to him. And anyway, long story short, Andrew Watt, the last couple of years, has now produced, Post Malone, the new Ozzy record. He's playing in a band with Iggy Pop now and Duff McKagan. I don't know what dirty photos he has on somebody, but he is killing it, and he's so successful right now. But that's sort of the beauty now that you and I can sort of look back, even if it is a short 5-10 years, and being like, remember when that baby band was Hailstorm or the Struts or Black Veil Brides or.
But Josh, put yourself in the brand shoes now. Like your Zippo, you had Andrew Watt's acoustic performance before he was producing Posty and doing the things he's done up to this point with Ozzy and etc. That's a brand win, right? And the thing we didn't touch on is, like, we had this great activation tent. You buy a commemorative lighter, you get access to the tent. That was also broadcast. Josh, I think you were with Alt Press, or was it Loudwire at the time?
I was the onstage MC, so if you watch the footage, you'll see me introduce him and then run to the audience and then turn on the other camera. And
that was live streamed through a media network.
Yeah, it was live streamed, but it was, then me and you and Les Targonsky had to go pick up people in golf carts. So it was punk rock as AF, as the kids say, but it was super cool. And it said, to your point, 5 years later, in hindsight, like, these guys look like geniuses, I always joke when I did the first AP Awards, there was a lot of pressure on me to book a local Cleveland band, local Ohio. I couldn't find anyone in Cleveland. So I went down to a couple towns down, like Dayton, and found, or Columbus, I'm sorry, and found 21 Pilots. And I thought it was like, okay, we'll hook up the local band. Now I'm like, yes, I was way ahead of the curve and booked 21 Pilots and Panic at the Disco, but sheer luck. I was just trying to book somebody local, but now in hindsight, it's like best business advice to give everybody. If it goes great, it was all you. If it sucked, that was.
But that's brand building, and I love the fact that you brought up 21 Pilots, because even I think this first or second, maybe this is the second Rockville that we did. Spotify. This is before Spotify was Spotify. Spotify brought a tour bus down, and they were doing Spotify Live, and the band they were doing Spotify Live was 21 Pilots. Yep. And the band went above, and I think that's important for the artist to understand. It's like, whenever the brand comes, it's the brand that is authentic to you, and you want to support them. And in that case, it was Spotify. Of course, you're going to jump through hoops to super serve the streaming platforms. But just knowing that they were there, they cared about the fan to engage, and then you had the band supporting it. There's a whole story now that goes full circle with the success of 21 Pilots, an arena band. Spotify is the biggest DSP streaming partner. Well, they were on the road together in this small little bus early on, playing rock festivals and playing the alt festivals just to get the name out there, which I think is an incredible way of an artist to attach themselves to a brand and going for a ride too. Now, not saying 21 Pilots would not be 21 Pilots without that, because we all know they are what they are. But the fact of the matter is, that can be any brand, that can be any band, and that's your opportunity to really attach yourself to go for a ride too.
It's very impressive. I see there's a great question here from Ryan Small. Any cautionary tales, any partnerships that fell flat? Yes, I will say, a blatant statement about selling sponsorships. If it's too good to be true, it is. And the other statement I always say is, the little dog barks the loudest. When I was selling, this is even actually more when I was selling advertising in magazines, the guy who buys the postage stamp ad for $40 is going to give you more headaches than Toyota Scion, right? Like it's dude, I didn't sell any, spike boots that I was selling. What the fuck? I mortgaged my house. The worst cautionary tale I could tell you, Ryan, was just because you have the legal right to sell it and activate it, maybe you shouldn't. And it's funny now, because I don't think this would work now in the context post-pandemic, but like there was a moment in the festival space about 3-4 years ago, before the pandemic, that it was very hot to have like on-site oxygen tanks and like vitamin injectables and things like that. And you're sort of just waiting for in that case, inebriated people to sort of be taken over to a tent to be shot up with vitamins to get back in the game. And I don't know, in the end, it just felt like it wasn't illegal. It wasn't wrong, but it just didn't feel right. I don't know. And it didn't feel natural to the thing. That one sticks out to me as one that after I sold it, I don't know if I felt great about it after, and then in hindsight, very much apologized to the client because I feel like he wasn't set up for success either, if that makes sense. So that was, I don't know about you, Clay, but
yeah, I mean,
sticks out to
I don't
me.
really have any, bad stories because I think the key, and I want to jump to other topics too,
Sure.
outside of just sponsorships too. But I think is being honest with your partners, and this goes back to being an ethical salesperson, if you want to call it that. But you got to be there to support and support your brands. And that happens when an alternative brand would come on site too. And with touring artists and touring sponsorships, a lot of times, these festivals that, I was a part of, we had an energy drink category taken care of. Well, you'd have a couple others that want to backdoor it through other tours.
Yeah.
And you have to be there to support your partner. At the same time, you can also build a new relationship with a new partner because they're there too. So you gotta be good cop, bad cop at the same time in the same person. Because at the end of the day, the person on site is who you care about. They're writing you the check. It's about their goals and their intentions, and you want to keep them happy, but you don't want to, be an asshole to a brand, saying, "Hey, man, what are you doing? We can't have those on stage. Be respectful. Maybe we can work this out here." And being transparent and working through the ebbs and flows of these events, because nothing goes perfect. Especially in the early days, the first year is always the most difficult. It's your first time dancing together. And some festival promoters have vision of how they want the site to look, and you have to maintain certain things, and the brand will come in and it's bull in a china shop sometimes.
I can't begin to describe to people not in the business that even the salespeople, where Mother Nature is not a factor in your sales, right? Like, everything could be great, and then there could be like, I know from experience, right? How many of your sponsor tents have blown away and ended up in other towns, right? Like these are real situations that occur. And but to your point, I know we don't have tons of time, and I want to make sure that we do talk about part two, which the main thing that you and I do now, which is quite the opposite of sponsorships, but we are really, we both work incredibly well with artists, I think in different ways, sometimes together, but we are here to help. I think it really sums up what everything we do in our whole career. I think you and I have been really good at finding money on the table for artists that didn't exist before, if that's fair to say.
Best way of saying it. That's why I love the term mailbox money.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the collaboration space is hot. I mean, I think the sponsorship space it was the first kind of introduction of brand building with tastemakers, influencers, artists. Athletes have been doing it since the 80s. I mean, I recommend everyone go watch that Air movie. Talk about the most brilliant partnership and collaboration that's ever been created is that Nike Jordan partnership. But it's about more than just the check, right? It's about creating something, right? And our job is to create value and monetization for our IPs, and that includes our partner that we're selling our client to. And I think the collaboration space, which you've done an incredible job, is creating new revenue streams for musicians, and that's our job as managers, to create revenue streams. And my role here at Shelter, just kind of lift the hood a little bit, is I'm not focused on the record deals, I'm not focused on the publishing deals, I'm focused on creating new money that didn't exist outside of those deals, outside of your traditional income, your touring, your merchandise, etc. So my role is to create, just like Josh, and I'm speaking for you, obviously, you've had an incredible opportunity, and you've done an incredible job building these revenue streams for artists in the graphic novel space, which we've done work together, and I'm a fan of, and I see it, but I also see how it affects and changes the artist too, and how with the elimination of brick and mortar record stores, you're actually allowing brick and mortar to exist again for artists, because now we're in Barnes and Noble and we're in the bookstores across the United States through your Z2 Comics deal. So there's all these unique ways now with these new SKU development and new products, where with the elimination of brick and mortar mom and pop record stores and the inability of being discovered just through hearing your music on MTV or terrestrial radio, now you can be discovered through alternative means. Now you can be discovered through the Z2 comic world, or you can be discovered through the whiskey partnership or the cannabis partnership or the shoe deal or the cosmetic deal. And we can start naming these. I mean, there's water deals, there's all these artists doing creative things because they understand that their brand and their ecosystem means something. And if they could find a partner to allow them to reach those goals, you have all this brand new world to exist in. And we're not going to jump into NFTs, folks, I promise you. But that's another exciting thing that kind of ties into this whole thing in brand world too, because once technology catches up with this thing, it's game over. And I think that's the exciting thing for what you and I do, Josh, is that technology supports everything we do, data supports everything we do. But at the end of the day, it's about consolidating a fan into an affinity and super serving those people. It goes back to what I keep saying, super serve these underserved people through products, through cool experiences, through pop-ups, but you can do it through product and brands, just like Run the Jewels just did with Nike.
You know, I'm thinking like how much, in essence, really what we're doing, right? Like, and so much of like, you know, I know you sometimes look more rabbinical than I do, but as the resident Jewish guy on this chat, like so much of Judaism culture is storytelling. And obviously there's a rich history. Storytelling is probably the greatest in sense of humor, but a history of matchmaking. And I feel like that's in a weird way what we're sort of doing here. Like, oh, you have to meet my son. He's a doctor with an energy drink. You know, it's sort of like a similar vibe of like, you know, my old boss, Anthony Danzy, greatest boss I've ever had. I hope he's watching over at Twitch. He always would say to me, man, you connect dots I didn't even know existed. Like you're just finding these weird dots, and like it's almost like a game, you know. And the way we could get these things working, it's great. Like with the comics, like for me, I very simply grew up loving comic books, rock and roll, and pro wrestling, right? And every day that I could mildly enjoy one of those or hang out in that universe and not have to go punch a clock or dig a ditch is a good day for me. And I can't believe how long it's all gone on, but it's because there's no secret. And people always ask you like, what's the secret to this, that? It's the secret to anything in life, right? It's like really hard work that you probably too much of a wimp to really do, you know? Yeah. How'd you get that photo? There's 1,000 hours worth of work you would never dare do to do it, or the things I had to do to get there. Anyway, I think with the comic book thing, what I love about it is I started it as sort of a side. The Z2 Comics for me was a side reaction to becoming a full-time sponsor person. I went to art school. I felt bad that I was only working in sponsorships or partnerships and felt that I needed, if I didn't do something creatively every day, if I didn't use it, I might lose it, you know, and I should use it. And, you know, it just naturally came together as a fun thing, not any sense of revenue, more just, wouldn't it be cool if blank, you know? And I think the greatest silver lining of the pandemic is I've seen so many people have been like, yeah, I went to law school and I'm a lawyer, but I really want to make candles. Fuck this. I'm making candles. Like people are, you know, my God bless my wife recently, you know, followed her dreams out of her corporate job. And I think a lot of people are sort of doing that and saying, let's just go. I had a great conversation with a colleague of ours 2 nights ago at dinner. And she was like, I kind of said like, I mean, you know, I've come this far. I'm just going to ride this shit out till I die. I don't know. Like, there's probably been moments in my life where I'm like, I could probably make more money not in music, doing something similar, but not.
But that's no fun. That's no fun.
And I don't want to do it, and I don't care. And I'm just going to stick with this until they cart me off or something. But I don't know. I honestly think like if someone say your title's what, like vice president of partnership, your job is Clay Busch. Like, and I'm sure at Shelter, they're like, can you just Clay Busch that shit? And you're like, yes, I'll Clay that today. And that's sort of, and I kind of look at myself in a similar way of like, I'm going to wake up and do this anyway, you know, whether you pay me or not, please pay me. But I love doing this anyway. And this is, you know, this really excites me. And there's like a faucet of creativity and thoughts coming out. Why turn it off? Well,
and I love, and that's a good parlay into kind of what I wanted to say too, because, you know, kind of beating to your own drum is kind of the core theme of everything that our culture does. And when I say it's not a small segment, folks, it's half of the segment is that side of it. I just want to make sure I'm clear. But, you know, looking at what the WWE is, I think WWE is the most important culture brand for music, not just rock and roll music, for music. And the reason is yeah, they do support harder, aggressive, alternative stuff, but that's a pop culture brand. And if you talk to people in the streets. You know, they may look down on it, all this stuff, but at the end of the day,
It's a
WrestleMania-
mirror. It's a mirror of society.
It is, and
A
at the end
funhouse
of the day,
mirror,
it's
but
the biggest pay-per-view events in the world are WrestleMania, and the biggest marketing drivers and biggest marketing footprints in these cities are as WWE. And I think they're such an important brand, a beat to their own drum, never changed who they are, to the point now where you have everything from Bad Bunny to Motionless in White. I mean, it is across the board when it comes to music and how they support. But the thing is,
and
it's
I'll
all
say
rock
it.
and roll.
I don't care if it's controversial. Bad Bunny,
Awesome.
legitimately fantastic wrestler.
It's awesome. I love
He's
it.
fantastic.
But I love
I
what
said
the
it.
WWE does.
And
I
I'm the
love it.
smartest. I'm maybe I'm officially now not the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, right.
But
But
yeah.
brand building, Josh, I mean, it's just understanding your core audience, and you've done that with Z2. But I love the matchmaking analogy you said, because it's it's the same conversation I had Jack Daniels when I chased him for a year. They wouldn't take my call. Dave Stang, I love him to death, and he's no longer there when he retired. But I literally called him as soon as I got on the phone. It's like, Jack Daniels, our festivals, why aren't we dancing? Like, this makes too much sense. We needed to be doing this together. And that's matchmaking. And I think, to your point, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And if that idea means, okay, if that's a whiskey, or if that's a comic book, or if that's a toy, or if that's a candle, I think as long as it makes sense within the ethos of what your platform is and who your audience is, anything can be authentic, anything can be a part of it, and anything can be drawn back to the music and your art that you're trying to put out there as far as your brand, and you're building the brand with another one.
absolutely. I dig it. So what do you got coming up next, Clay?
We have a lot of beverages coming out in the next couple quarters here that I can't necessarily announce yet, but you'll be seeing those across my LinkedIn and across the artists that we work with here at Shelter.
We're going to put an NDA through the chat, and then everyone will sign it, and then you'll
see we're doing a lot in the drinks. We're doing a lot in the drink space. I actually I'd send you a text message about one of our clients and you meeting at an event to talk about something. That's what that's about. So just hopefully doing some more work with you, building some incredible partnerships. One thing I'm very excited that I want to call out is our wonderful friends at Monster just did an endorsement deal with one of ours, Fisher, the DJR's Fisher, which we're kicking off this as we speak. So very excited about that. I think we have a Monster person on here, so I want to give him a shout out.
Very cool. Wow. Love Monster. And what probably said, like, there's, if I could really pinpoint the three brands that I've worked closest with over the years that have supported me, like I said, and supported my events. And when I say this is multiple, it's not like I happen to do one event at this job one time. I'm talking about 3 or 4 different companies. That's how strong the bond is. But Gibson, Monster as well, and then Journey Sneakers has been incredible, and the whole Genesco company down there in Nashville, who owns Johnson and Murphy and all the other great shoe stores in the mall, and they did a lot of great stuff as far as bringing youth culture in and out of the malls and stuff, and supporting music. I would think going forward, like for me, we have for Z2 on that side of things, we have so many great books coming out. We are looking and are expanding into ways with brand partnerships. We did our first branded book last year with Balmain Paris, which is a huge fashion house, and really the partnership forced us to push and step up our game of what we're capable of. In this case, was creating a one-of-one edition in a suitcase with like padlocks and the whole thing. It really and that resulted in a further partnership with the Fairmont hotel chain, Sofitel, across the globe through Z2. So like we see a lot of value in that, in the way, in just that the graphic novel medium and comics medium is such a great way to tell a story. I can't tell you how many times brands, I can't say their names yet, but a lot of brands have come to us, again, I'll use the term, to solve their problems coming up. Hey, it's the 100th anniversary of our company. We want to make this. Hey, we want to include something in every case of blank. We want to pair this with that. How do we tell this story? We sadly live in a culture, right, that people make content for traffic lights now. Like, I want to make something really funny while you're stopped at a red light. Like, that's sort of the attention span. I was with an artist recently, and this was actually with Sam Smith recently, and I wasn't with Sam Smith, but it was a conversation that basically a pop artist in that level right now better come up with the best 12 seconds to launch their next album. If that 12 seconds is off, it might be fucked, right? What's that 12-second? What's your TikTok? What's your dance? What is that tease? You're gonna come out in 10 seconds there. So it's really great. Well, it looks like we're getting towards the end of our portion, but I want to make sure that we give enough time for anyone else to ask any questions. I see Squiggy's in the chat, so shout out to him. But I also want to make sure that if anyone has any questions in the meantime,
well, I want to
answer
call
that.
out. Let's call out Squiggy real quick while we get these questions real quick, because that's a gentleman that saw a lane and super served and underserved demographic and category, and that was a musical instrument category at these music festivals. So if you're ever at the Danny Wimmer Fest, go check out the music experience. Squiggy is the catalyst that has allowed musical instruments to come to music festivals, to be played at music festivals, around 20,000-30,000 people. So people continue to play music and continue to learn how to play guitars and drums and learn to sing and learn the arts. Squiggy is so important from not only a product perspective, from an education perspective. So I recommend everyone who's in the chat to follow Squiggy and give him some love, because he's very important to music.
Well, here's a good question from Tom. How do we get to be like you, Clay? You gotta grow that mustache out for like 20 years.
I'm blessed. I have a lot of fun with what I do, and I get to work with incredible people. I don't know. Honestly, I'm lucky. I'm so lucky to do what I do. The way I met Wimmer was all off a chance, and me leaving Interscope Records, and me, kind of finding something that I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to show the world that I can do something. Here's my middle finger in the air kind of scenario. And it led me to meet Wimmer. So everything's through luck. And so I guess work hard, because I think the luckiest people in the world are the hardest workers. And I can talk to Josh saying, I don't know anyone works harder than him. And there's a reason that luck follows him. And the reason that Josh has had the success with Z2 and the other things that he does, it's because he works hard, and he's a good dude, and he's ethical, doesn't stab people in the back, and just does things the right way. That I think you can do anything you want as long as you live your life by those principles, in my opinion.
Absolutely. The best analogy I'll make to answer that question for you, Tom, is I went to art school to become a comic book artist. I graduated with a sculpture degree, just so everyone knows how useless that became. I became a graphic designer and art director. I was doing my own concerts and parties and zine release parties and things like that. I didn't know I just knew that we needed money to pay for X, right? So I had to get a sponsor. I can't describe, like, I felt like I was Daniel's son at Miyagi's house. Like I was painting for years, and all of a sudden I knew karate, right? Like, and I think that's probably, I know it sounds easy to say, Tom, as an answer, but like, it wasn't my job. I was just doing it on the side. And then one day my bosses were like, who got that sponsorship? Who did that? I'm like, I did. Am I in trouble? They're like, you're fired. I'm like, no, but you're rehired as a head of business. So go back to Clay. It'll be nice. Bring back to the Nike Air story. Just do it. Really, just do it. Stop. I can tell you times I'm in a conversation with somebody who's like, well, I had this great idea for this podcast, but I don't know. Like, no one bought the podcast. Like, that the technology is right there. Just do it.
Do it.
Do it. No one stopped me from going to a Kinko's at 3 a.m. and making zines all night, and stealing their glue sticks. Sorry if anyone worked at Kinko's. I took your glue sticks. But like, you just got to do it. And the people, because if you don't want to do this stuff in your free time and do it on your own, that's fine. Someone else will. I want to work with that person. Those people are pretty awesome. So, and yeah, Orville, right? That is true.
I love that.
That is technically true, or his brother. So yeah, I hope that's a good answer, Tom.
That was awesome. Gentlemen, I hate to do it, but we do need to cut it off. This has been incredible. I knew it was going to be incredible. To the audience, I promised you it was going to be incredible. And did these guys deliver or what? So thank you for making me look smart by bringing you two geniuses into the smartest people in the room. I love what you're doing. I love your energy. I love your passion for it. And so, audience, it ain't rocket science. It's roll up your sleeves, get dirt under your fingernails, and make something happen. And that's what these guys are living testimonials to. So I really appreciate what you're doing. I want to encourage you to carry on and keep doing more of it. Hope to see you out at a festival soon. And with my normal sign off, I'll simply say, be nice to everyone. All
I
right.
love that. Please.
Love that.
All right, guys. Thanks a bunch. Talk to
Thank
you
you
soon.
guys. Great seeing everybody.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
everybody.